Today I'm so happy to be talking to my amazing friend Callie Broaddus, the founder of Reserva, the Youth Land Trust. Hi Callie, thanks so much for joining me today.
Thank you for having me, finally.
Callie, we've been friends ever since COP15 when we met in Montreal. It was Christmas and I was handing out candy canes to delegates. They're asking them to sign my Santa's Nice list by promising to help protect 30% of the earth for biodiversity by 2030. You were the most amazing supporter, and I got asked to speak at the plenary to all the delegates there on behalf of kids, and that would have never happened if it wasn't for you. So thank you.
Thank you for doing that.
Reserva is the only international conservation charity led by youth. 100 kids and youth serve as directors and youth council members. So far, Reserva has protected a 244-acre cloud forest site at the Dracula Reserve in Ecuador, and last year helped add an additional 1,050 acres to protect the area from gold miners. Why is it called Dracula, and why is this place so special?
So it's called Dracula, not because of the vampire, but because of a genus of orchid that has these fang-like sepals and they kind of come out like this. And the word Dracula actually means little dragon in Latin. So this reserve, which is in these high altitude cloud forests in the tropical Andes of Ecuador, has a really high density of these Dracula orchids. But actually, we know that there are at least 400 species of orchid at this reserve in Ecuador. And of those 400 species, only 7 of them have actually been assessed by the IUCN Red List, which is the International Union for the Conservation of Nature. It's the body of scientists who are saying what's globally endangered and what's not. And when we don't even have an assessment, that's a huge risk, because if we don't know what the population of something is, what its threats are, whether it's increasing population or declining, then it's really hard to save that species. So Dracula Reserve is really important, not just for orchids, but it is this home to so many species that are very little known. So yes, we have some phenomenally endangered and famous species like the brown-headed spider monkey, which is critically endangered. We have the Andean bear or spectacled bear, which is, by the way, the same species that Paddington bear was. That's a vulnerable species. We have these, big things like that. But then when you go down to this smaller scale, we have critically endangered Atelopus coine, which is a stubfoot toad, the Raibocolami, which is another endangered toad, Pristamantis dulmani, which is a critically endangered frog. These are species that we know are in trouble, and Dracula Reserve is one of the only places where they have a safe haven, where they have habitat that is being conserved. It's owned by a local conservation organization, and there are rangers who are local, who are paid to walk around and just make sure that there aren't mining companies or people who are poaching for the pet trade threatening these species. There are also a lot of species there that are new to science or that we know of, but we just don't know what their population is yet. And so this place is really important. One thing that's been really cool about the Dracula Reserve project in Ecuador is that it's not just we raised a bunch of money and we were able to fund the purchase of 244 acres and then the next 1,050. Because this is a project that has multiple international partners who have been helping to fund protection of habitat in this area for 10 years, we actually have a footprint that's a little bit larger than even those numbers suggest. So in total, including what we call the world's first youth-funded nature reserve, we have been part of protecting 2,269 acres, which youth have either funded in part or in whole with our partners. So it's an enormous contribution to nature that youth and kids have made from all around the world.
You once said to me on a youth council call that the biodiversity crisis is even more urgent than the climate crisis, because climate change is just a math problem. We subtract the carbon and methane and it goes away. But with biodiversity loss, when those animals and birds and bugs and tiny orchids and giant 6-foot earthworms are gone, they're gone forever. That sort of stuck with me. How many at-risk species are there at Dracula, and what is your favorite creature you've helped save?
First, I'll have to address the earthworm in the room here, which is probably that 6-foot long earthworm was the most surprising creature I've ever seen at Dracula Reserve. It was on my last expedition there, which is probably my 6th or 7th time doing field work in the reserve. And we were leaving, we were really rushed for time trying to get to an area where we had service to make it for a meeting. And as we were driving down the road, right before we left the reserve, this worm that was full 2 meters long was just stretched across the whole gravel road. And we got out and we all just were completely mind blown looking at this thing. We didn't have enough time to do a full scientific workup. We would have liked to have weighed it and taken measurements and documented all the sides of it so that we could make sure that we could get it ID'd to a species level, but we didn't have time. So it remains a mystery. I don't know how many at-risk species there are at Dracula because there is still so much left to be discovered there. I know that there are at least 13 endangered or vulnerable species on the site we most recently worked to protect. And that's just the species that have that official stamp by the IUCN. But every single expedition I've been on, we've also discovered new species to science. So animals, plants that have always lived there, but scientists have never seen them. They've never described them. And so they are effectively unknown. And the thing is, many of those would likely be considered critically endangered. And so that's a difficult question to answer. I think that what's more important than the number is the fact that this area is the most endemic biodiversity hotspot in the world. The term endemic means endemism, which means species that are unique to an area. A species can be endemic to one side of one mountain, or it can be endemic to a whole country. So the species in this area are just really, really unique. And that's what's most important about this place. But what you said earlier about the climate crisis being a math problem, I want to be cautious not to oversimplify it because, of course, the climate crisis is a many-legged creature and there are many different solutions to tackling it. But ultimately, it does really boil down to carbon in, carbon out. And when you think about the biodiversity crisis, which we know that we can't solve one without solving the other, they are inextricable. We need to work on both. But for me, the reason I feel so compelled to work specifically on biodiversity loss is that when we lose these natural areas, especially areas where there hasn't been as much work done to understand what's living there, we could be losing species forever before we even know what lives there. And I think sometimes people counteract that idea that extinction is forever by saying, well, but one day, what if we can bring back species from extinction, like the ivory-billed woodpecker or mammoths? First, I would say, well, there's the question of should we? Is that where we should be directing our time and resources? I think it would be awesome. But imagine humans went extinct and some other intelligent creature said, but we can bring them back. So we're going to bring back Robert's DNA. We'll make Robert and we'll make someone else. Are you really going to be able to repopulate the species from the limited DNA you can get from a species that's gone extinct? That's not a comfortable thing to imagine. So it's much better, even in a perfect world where we could bring species back from extinction, the genetic diversity that we lose as populations get whittled down is so critical. So we need to think about protecting those wild populations before they're diminished and before they disappear.
Yeah, that's true. Can you tell me about Reserva's newest project, tracking turtles to protect Panama's Pearl Islands?
I'm really excited about this project because it's our first marine project. And to be honest, when we started Reserva, I had no idea we would be doing a marine project, but a bunch of the youth council members who have been on our team for the last couple of years are huge ocean nuts. So they pushed for it and we said, yeah, you included. So they pushed for it and we found this incredible project, which is led by the Leatherback Project. That's our local partner organization in Panama. So what this project is doing is using the science of data collection on sea turtle migratory pathways, placing satellite tags on nesting sea turtles and understanding where they go, and then using that data to inform the government of which marine areas need protection. So the challenge that we were facing in creating a marine protected area as opposed to a land-based protected area is you can't just buy the ocean. You can't buy water. And so it's a more difficult thing to communicate because we can't tell you, hey, if you donate $3, you can protect a classroom-sized area of rainforest or a classroom-sized area of ocean. We can't say that because we can't buy it. We can't be sure that the government is going to respond to the data in the right way. However, through really important research into our partner and to the work they've done before, into the government and what their leanings may be and what opportunities for conservation there are, we feel really confident that there's a data gap here. The Pearl Islands, which are off the west coast of Panama, and there's an international reserve that's being planned called CMAR, and it encompasses all the other islands further out in the Pacific and very conspicuously misses the Pearl Islands. And our local partner asked the Panamanian government, why aren't these included? Could we get them included? And they said, that's a possibility. We just don't have the data that shows that they should be. So this project is about young people from around the world working together to raise the funds that are needed to collect that data. So that data is endangered sea turtles migrating across these waters and tracking those paths to inform the government so that they can make an informed decision about what to protect and how much.
Yeah. What do you love most about Reserva?
I think at a time like we're growing up in, where anytime you turn on your phone or look at the news or you see threats and it's stressful, and the antidote for me is this incredible community. It's very hope inducing because together we can work together to make a huge difference. We can actually save habitat, but also we motivate each other to keep our chin up, keep working. And I think a lot of the people in this community, they're not just satisfied protesting. Most people are also involved in some kind of protest or speaking up about laws, etc. But everyone who's in this group also wants to do something concrete that impacts solutions. So it's just a really positive group of people to be with. That's my favorite part. And getting to work with people like you also, because you're looking literally at the future of conservation, and that's pretty neat.
And I'm basically still a child.
Basically.
What accomplishment are you most proud of?
The accomplishment I'm most proud of is the fact that we are still here almost 5 years later, and we have stuck to our mission and we've succeeded. And so we can say there are 2,269 acres of cloud forest in Ecuador that we have been part of protecting, in whole or in part. We have helped protect that. And so if we shut our doors today, we could say, hey, we did something great. But what I'm most proud of is that we haven't shut our doors and that we have said, that worked, let's do it again. And we're now looking forward, looking to replicate this model around the world with a marine reserve in Panama and, fingers crossed, a new land project in Colombia that we will hope to launch later this year or next year. So
if you're a kid and you want to help, you can visit the Reserva website and send a letter or do a drawing showing why you love nature and why we should protect it. How does this help Reserva?
We're nothing without the youth who take part in our challenges. That's literally our whole point of existing. So how does it help? It gives us life. I actually, just before I came up to my apartment, I picked up a package from the front desk of probably 200 letters from kids in New York. And I opened a letter to show the person who manages our front desk. It says, I love nature because I love to hear the bird sing a song. It's so simple and so sweet, but it's true. This is why we all love nature. So that's Kiera, age 6, grade 1. And it just melted his heart and it melted mine. Of course, we're going to match those letters with $3 each toward conservation, and it's going to have a tangible impact. But those messages are the kinds of things that one sentence is going to make me sit at this desk and keep working full of energy for the next 4 hours because I'm so motivated. So yeah.
Thanks, Kara.
Yeah.
Callie, thanks so much for joining me today. Please click the link below to send a letter or to make a donation to Reserva Youth Land Trust to join a unique youth and kid-led effort to create a marine protected area in Panama. And remember, together kids can save the world. Thank you.
Thank you.